If I can teach one individual to do something better that will save his life or save someone else's life, then that's a win for everybody.
Hey, get ready for a great episode. Today we have Scott Rainey, and he's the president of Quest Safety Solutions, and he has to communicate not only with the companies and the regulation bodies, but also the employees and getting them to engage and make sure that things are done right. I'm pretty sure you have an idea of what that's like working with your employees and the standards that you set, but also some of the standards that the client expects. So you're going to really, really enjoy this episode. Here's Scott Rainey. As a safety consultant, I know what you do, but I want any listener or viewer to get a grasp of what you do with companies and the reason you do what you do.
I guess I should start with a little bit of background. I am not a consultant, not a safety consultant by training. I'm actually was trained in environmental management systems, which is more the environmental side, regulatory side from the air and water standpoint. And that really didn't fit my personality. I like to help people. I want to see meaningful changes in people's lives. And I fell into the safety business, into the safety consulting business originally through training. We had a small training facility. And about maybe 40% of our business was consulting. What that means for my clients is that we function as their in-house safety team for companies that just aren't large enough to justify the expense of having a full-time safety person.
Yeah.
The majority of that work is database work. There are certain databases that our clients have to participate in, and we manage those. We work those systems so that headache goes away. And a lot of it is headache, but those are the systems that we have in place. And that's what we do. And then we coordinate some training for them. We use third-party training providers that will send their employees to so that they meet the regulatory and the client-driven requirements so that their guys are ready to go to work, that they're educated in what they need to be, and that they can do their job safely.
Yeah. So let me kind of recap to make sure I heard what you're saying. You have large companies who hire specialty companies. So let's just say there's a refinery out there who needs electricians. There are also safety industry guidelines, policies, and requirements that have to be met by every level. And so you work with individuals and you work with companies to ensure that the individuals meet all the standards, requirements, certifications, so they can work in a safe environment and no one gets in trouble.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
The majority of our clients tend to be in the, I'd say, 20 to maybe 60 or 70 employees range.
Got it.
And it's difficult for those companies to justify the cost of an in-house safety person because, quite frankly, they're expensive. So we work on a retainer model where we do what needs to be done for those companies. Now, as they grow, ideally, and this is something we've had happen with several clients, as those companies grow and they get to a point where they can justify having a person on full-time, or frankly, their needs have gotten so big that, it's just out of our scope, then we want to see that. We want to see them get to that point where, all right, hey, look, you guys have grown up and now you're a big operation. You really do need somebody here full-time. One of the advantages that we have is because we work for a bunch of different companies, contractors that do different types of work, is our exposure to their clients, the large oil and gas companies, the majors, minors, mid-majors. We've dealt with those requirements. So if I have a client that's never worked for this company before and they say, hey, look, we're getting some work for these guys coming up, are we ready to go to work for them?
Yeah.
Because we've already worked with another client for that company, we're in a sort of unique position where we can say, okay, well, here's what you can expect. These are the things they're going to be asking for. Here's what you already have that we've put in place for you, so you have those boxes checked. But we're going to need to do these things either a little bit differently, or you haven't been doing them because you didn't need them, and now we need to start putting that into place. So our exposure through our client base gives us this really, um, I want to say good. I can't think of a better word for it. It gives us a good base to work from,
Yeah.
so that, the companies, as they grow and as our clients grow and as they get more exposure, we can give them the best advice for that situation.
How hard is it to, I guess, read and understand these regulatory guidelines?
It's very difficult.
Yeah.
They're written in a lot of legal jargon, and there are also letters of interpretations. So it's not like there's a single place to go to find everything. There are the federal regulations, and that may be from OSHA, that might be from Coast Guard, it might be from Bessie. We don't do any mining work, but there's the whole Mining Health Safety Administration. There's DOT regulations. So there are a lot of different pieces you have to pull in, and you've got to look at that client and say, all right, out of all of these regulatory agencies, which of these apply? And then even inside of that, all right, well, what are the parts that we need to pay attention to? And on top of those regulations, you have your client-driven requirements, which often go way beyond what the regulations require. And certain operators will want certain things. And as much as it would make my life easier, the operators don't agree on what they're asking for.
Yeah.
And that's what I was saying earlier, where you may never have worked for this operator, but now you are. Well, that's going to change the way we were doing things, because yes, you are in compliance with the regulations. Yes, you are in compliance with what your existing clientele is asking for, but these guys just want it slightly different. And
you have to abide by what they want.
Right.
If you want to work.
And you don't really get to negotiate with them. They're setting the rules, and that's just the way it's going to be.
What you're doing is really important, though, because there are safe operators out there, and there are probably some who may not want to play by the rules. And regardless of your mindset as a business owner, you gotta play by the rules.
You do,
or they get you in trouble.
It's gotten a lot more stringent. I've been in the oil and gas business for a little over 20 years, so I'm still relatively young at this. But in my 20 years, I've seen the industry change tremendously from where we used to write a manual. It would sit on a shelf. It would collect dust. Nobody ever took a look at it unless there was an audit. And even then, it was just, hey, do you have a policy? Yeah, sure. We got a policy. Of course we do. But since Deepwater Horizon, the regulatory environment has gotten more stringent, and the operator requirements have really gotten much more stringent. And they have so many contractors that are doing the work, which is also a huge change in the industry. Most of the work now is done by contractors.
Correct.
So they don't have the bandwidth to vet everybody. They kind of set these rules, and they say, look, we don't have the time or the bandwidth to check everybody's stuff. You comply or you don't work for us. And there's someone who will.
Yeah, sure.
So that's made it much more important for my clients. When they have work to be done, they have to be ready. They have to be ready to go to work, or someone will show up at the dock or the heliport and they're just going to get turned around. And, that's bad for everyone. It makes me look bad. It makes my client look bad, and the work doesn't get done.
So why wouldn't a contractor, for example, that's working for a really large, I'm going to just keep using refinery, understanding that it could be big construction, it could be other industries, but let's say you're an electrical contractor and you get a job, either through negotiation or a bidding process, you get a job at a large refinery. Why do you end up getting to the gate at the refinery and being turned away? Why don't you do it beforehand?
Some companies do. They take a very proactive approach and they train everybody for everything, but it's costly. That is probably a large part of it. It's costly to do the actual training. You have people who are people. They may have been scheduled for a class and they just never showed up because they didn't feel like they needed it. You have turnover in these industries where, an electrician gets an offer from a competing company and they go. So now I've got to backfill. You bring in another guy, and all of the training that you paid for the guy that you've lost, well, now you've got to repeat it again. And often these jobs come up very quickly where people don't have a whole lot of time to prep, because the refinery, unless they're doing a turnaround, some sort of planned maintenance, If something breaks, they want it up today.
Yeah.
And you're going to get a call inevitably Friday at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and say, hey, we need a guy out here tomorrow morning. If I don't have a guy who's met those requirements, then we can't take that job. And sometimes companies can get in the gate. Sometimes they'll get waived through, they'll get variances or waivers, and they get to do the work, and other times they don't. It's just, you never know.
Yeah. So what we just talked about is what I think is so important about you having people ready when they need to be ready, not getting them ready at the last second or afterwards, right? Because to me, you're looking at three different levels: these large companies, these contractors, and the individuals working for the contractors, right? So there's requirements and readiness, requirements and readiness, or requirement. So individuals, if they're not compliant, then it's going to slow everything down. If the company's not, and if the large companies don't understand the requirements, it's just going to slow, confuse, and delay projects. Is what
It does, and there's, I think, one of the more valuable functions that we provide, and it's not actually in our scope of work, but it's just what we do, is we communicate. We're talking to people from the refinery side in this standpoint. Hey, what are you guys really looking for? Yeah, I understand we're coming out there to do some work, but tell me what you need. What are your top three things that we've got to have? Okay, what are the middle three things that you'd like for us to have, and what are three things that don't really matter? And I know that sounds sort of counterproductive, but that is the reality of it. So we're coordinating not just with the ultimate client, but we're communicating with our client, and we're communicating with the guys in the field. And some of that is just moving pieces around. You need someone who has an overview of everything that's going on.
Yep.
And then someone saying, well, us saying, okay, how do we plug these pieces in? What is available where that guy is? You know, this guy may be in East Texas. All right, well, we do a lot of training here in South Louisiana. I don't have anybody in East Texas. So someone's got to find that. All right, where do we have something that's relatively close? What is that guy's availability like? And we're travel agents in a sort of way.
In a way, you're coordinating and ensuring things get done.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to do it. I mean, so it does probably take a special person with a certain personality and patience to do what you do. I mean, so what makes you the right fit for that?
If I'm honest, what makes me the right person is I made a very, very good hire over 10 years ago. My right hand is Aquana Zachary, and she is phenomenal.
Yeah.
She is a great people person. She's got a great mind for details, and she's very, very good at it. So I can sort of step back from the nuts and bolts of that management. And as long as I have an overview of what's going on, I can communicate with the refiners. I can communicate with the client, and then I can let Aquinas know, hey, here's the guy we've got to get ready.
Yeah.
Here's where he is at. Here's his phone number, and she will work her magic on the back end, and we get it done.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We make a very, very good team. Very, very good team.
Your company is the bridge between all this stuff, but you are the liaison, right?
Yes.
That is amazing. I also think, though, one of the things you and I have had previous conversations about your desire to learn and your desire to teach. And I kind of feel like that might be something that I don't want to overlook. You know what I mean? Because you are a lifelong learner, but what I've learned from you for other organizations, and it's just you're a teacher.
I do enjoy teaching.
I know. Was that just inherent, or is that something that you feel like was just a gift?
I think it is a gift. I've always been curious. I was the kind of kid who took my toys apart. If I got a remote control car, I wanted to take it apart, and I want to know why it worked. Yeah. So for me, learning it's got to be translated into something that the learner is going to understand. And that's not going to be the same for anyone. If I'm teaching, someone about algebra, okay, well, what do you like? Now let's break that down into something that you know, and now let's associate this with that. in the world of safety, there are so many different tasks that are being done on any given day.
Yeah.
So a fabrication shop is going to operate forklifts, but they're not going to operate forklifts the same way that an inspection shop does. Yes, they're still forklifts, but they're moving different things. They have different weights. They have different size constraints. So whenever I'm teaching something, it's got to be in a language that the student is going to understand. And I love seeing that light bulb go off. I love seeing someone who's struggled with the concept, or they've heard it 100 different times, but now they hear it in a way that really resonates and it means something to them.
Yeah.
Because that means something to me. And I do believe in safety. Like I said, I sort of fell into this field. I was blessed with this because I do have an impact on lives. And if I can teach one individual to do something better that will save his life or save someone else's life, then that's a win for everybody.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of light bulbs, what I love that. One of the things I heard in that is teaching people toward the outcome. You're looking at, all right, two different forklift drivers, but they have two different needs, or there are two different outcomes they're trying to strive for. The keystrokes may be kind of the same, but if you don't put it in their language and give them examples so they can win or find success, then you could be teaching a totally different way, and they won't grasp it. That's a big deal in communication.
I think there's a risk there. I can teach anyone to pass a test.
Yep.
And too often that happens. We teach to the test, but that doesn't mean that someone understands or is competent or is qualified to do that task. So when that light bulb goes off, there's a measure of reassurance that I receive that, okay, yes, the information was transmitted. Yes, it was received, but it actually stuck.
Yeah.
And we did something meaningful with that. And again, it may change a life.
Absolutely. In the military, I learned, as I was a corpsman with the Marines, and we learned how to give IVs. We learned how to do all this stuff. And we had this 3-phase process: see one, do one, teach one.
Right.
So, you're learning, then you apply it practically. But when you can teach it, you know it. And so I bet you love seeing them get to a point where I got it.
I do. And I've actually seen that several times. I've gone back to clients years after the fact, and I'll see guys that I've taught something, and I'm just walking through a shop, just paying attention, watching what's going on. And I'll see them interact with someone else on a piece of equipment and say, hey, man, that's not the way we're supposed to be doing this. You need to do it this way. And I've been with these customers for 7-8 years. 5 years ago, that's not what they would have done.
Yeah.
Right. So that teaching is now going beyond me. It's being done on someone else or by someone else. And it is tremendously rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. As a leader, though, what happens when you see something being done incorrectly?
That's difficult.
I mentioned patience earlier. Yeah.
I've been in the oil field for 20 years, but there are thousands and thousands of jobs, and they're all done differently.
Yeah.
So I actually had this conversation this morning. When I see something that I feel is incorrect, I need to first remember that it may be right, and I just don't know. But that is a bridge into the conversation, because I can easily claim ignorance. Say, look, man, I don't know how that's supposed to be done, but from where I'm standing, it looks like there's some risk here. What is the correct way that this is supposed to happen? Can you help me? Can you teach me?
Yeah.
And inviting people into that conversation is incredibly powerful. People like to share knowledge. People want
another
to
light
talk.
bulb. I don't care what industry you're in.
No.
Engage in that level of the conversation so you have a better understanding, but prove that they know what they're talking about.
Well, I have to. The conversation this morning it's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. So my interaction, my intervention has got to be from a respectful standpoint, saying, look, I don't know. But I do see some risk, and I don't want you to get hurt. Maybe that is the way it's done. And if so, then now I know, and I won't have to say anything about it the next time I see it. But you have to be respectful.
Yeah.
Very often oil field personnel are looked down upon. Hey, look, these are blue collar workers. They got grease underneath their fingernails. These are not the sharpest tools in the shed. And that's just not true.
Yeah.
These guys are experts in their own ways, and you have to respect this. It's also difficult as the industry has aged. There aren't a whole lot of young guys coming in. So you may have guys who've been in this business for 40 years, 40 plus years. The average age in some shops is well north of 55 years old. So I've got to be very respectful about approaching someone who's done a task for 40 some odd years and say, hey, man, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
That is not going to go anywhere. It does not matter what I say after that. It does not matter how close he
They're
came
not going to hear a thing.
to chopping his hand. Right. He's not going to hear a thing.
Yeah.
And if anything, out of spite, he's going to continue to do it that way.
That's right.
So
That's
I have to be very, very, kind of put my kid gloves on, Let's take our time here. Let's talk about it.
Well, and that's where communication is one of the keys, and curiosity on your part, right? Listening, but I love respect that you throw that in there.
You have to.
Yeah, absolutely. And then for you as a leader, outside sometimes of their organization, you're coming in, you often have to give respect to receive respect. Mm-hmm. And so I have a feeling you know how to do that very, very well.
Yeah. Well, and some of that is, I work for customers where I don't know what they do.
Yeah.
I've been hired by clients where I have no experience in that field at all. I know the regs. I know what the regulations say, how this task should be. So I have to learn as well. Okay, I'm going to just spend some time walking around. I need to see what you guys actually do. I've got to talk to the guy, say, how does that machine work? What does that machine even do?
Yeah, what is the output of that machine? Yeah.
And my curiosity has been tremendously advantageous here. I mean, my grandfather had a machine shop, so I've been around big machines for a long, long time, and I like them. I like big machines. I like the stuff that we do in this business. So the natural curiosity is helpful because I can ask a guy, hey, what does this do? I really want to know. And it's not necessarily from a safety standpoint. That's really neat how that stuff works.
So what do you do when a company, because I have the same issue I work with in a certain size company, but when they outgrow, either my experience or, my systems, I have to graduate them. What happens when a company grows to a certain point and you say, look, it's time for you to get an in-house person, or we got to do things differently?
I don't think I've ever initiated that conversation.
Okay.
I've seen companies grow large enough, and it really comes down to we're just constantly scrambling to get these things done.
Yeah.
And then we start discussing it. It is, let me back that up. It is something we talk about in the very, very beginning when we begin working with a client. Say, look, this is our role. We want to help you get to this point. But I've had customers who've done it on their own. I've had customers who've grown way beyond our normal range, and we continue to function.
And you just keep up with industry, and
them.
you keep growing yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
It is.
So what do you do? Just go to the books, you study, or you go on site and just keep learning as they grow? I mean, is that one of the keys?
I haven't had anyone really grow into a different industry.
Yeah, sure.
So the regulations, and they do change some, but not a whole lot. So as long as you're staying on top of what the changes are, it hasn't been that difficult.
I imagine when a company gets to a point where they have more employees than you normally take care of, it starts to make sense to have an in-house and what that transition might look like. But what I'm hearing is you grow along with the companies.
I actually have helped a customer with that, now that I think about it. And they were acquired by a larger company, and just their scope actually did change significantly. But they got very, very large. And I actually helped interview and review resumes for the people who were going to replace me. And I didn't mind at all. It's like, look, frankly, you're doing me a favor because these guys are just becoming a headache. It's taking away resources from our other client base. And that was an interesting process, but
Yeah.
no animosity. Hey, I'm happy you
No.
guys have achieved this. This is wonderful.
Yeah, you led them toward graduating,
Right.
and if somebody gets acquired, and that's my world is looking at exits and being acquired and being prepared for an acquisition. Like our guest just mentioned, chaos has a way of creeping up in our business, and it's confusing. It causes delay, and it's really, really expensive. I want to invite you to take our Erase the Chaos business assessment. It takes about 10 minutes to take. You'll get a free PDF report, and you'll have the tools you need to grow without chaos. Now, back to the episode. I'm going to tell you, for anybody out there listening who has a company who needs safety and there are regulations and guidelines, they need a guy like you, because if somebody were to come looking in under the hood and it's a mess on the safety side, they're not as valuable.
That's true. I firmly believe that there are no secrets in life.
Yeah.
I think eventually everything will come to the surface. And like insurance, whether you love it or hate it, safety is necessary. It is a requirement to have.
Yeah.
And the companies that don't, that just sort of pencil whip it and have a book that they never use, eventually your clients are going to show up and they're going to say, show me.
Yeah.
And when they do, if you don't have it, you're either going to lose the work, or they're going to set so many restrictions on you that it can become not profitable.
Yeah, sure.
I've actually, and this is sort of another change I've seen in the last 2 years, is where we went from having a book to, okay, you have a book, you have these policies, you need to start doing them. And we're doing that. And now we're starting to see operators say, hey, show me that it's actually effective. Show me that it's actually moved the needle. Not that you're just filling out the paperwork, but show me where you've made a catch. Show me where this is
you
changing.
challenging companies?
No, these are the operators starting to ask. So they're in their auditing process, they're asking for more real world scenarios where these policies and procedures that we have are actually not just being filled out, but where is it making a difference?
That's right.
And are you measuring that difference? Are you tracking any kind of information to see, hey, is it working? And if it's not, then change it.
Yeah.
You do have some leeway in how you do things, because again, every task is going to be different. Every contractor is going to do things differently. All right, if you're a 5-man shop, you're not going to run that the same way that you do a 50-man shop.
Yeah.
The regulations are the same between those two, but show me what actually works here. So I don't believe that you're going to be able to just get away with pencil whipping it anymore.
Which, to me, if the industry or the regulating bodies want the outcomes, which is safety, then you have to do what they're doing. You got to challenge the operators. I love that. So speaking of outcomes, we're big on business owners who have certain lifestyles, and I have a feeling that this one aligns with your ultimate purpose in life. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that. Like, what do you feel you were put on the earth to do, and why does this align with your purpose?
I've thought a lot about this over the last couple of years. Is what my vocation is. And I don't believe as a young man, I really, A, knew what vocation meant.
Yeah, sure.
And B, was willing to sacrifice what it took to live that vocation. I believe my calling is to be a teacher of some sort, to share the information that I have, to make a difference in people's lives. I often say this, especially if I'm doing a safety meeting with the shop hands, floor hands, whatever. Look, I'm paid by your boss, but I work for you guys. My goal, my job, my mission is to make your lives better. Safety for me has been a vehicle to accomplish that, because it is an inherently dangerous business. Oil and gas has got some inherent risk to it.
Yep.
Everything is heavy. Everything is hot or cold. It all wants to bite you. It's all got high pressure. There's dangerous chemicals. There's all kinds of things out there. And if I cannot communicate to the employee how to protect themselves in that environment, then I've failed. And that's just unacceptable to me.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I love that. And I would agree, knowing you as I do, and having a teacher's heart, I think that aligns you perfectly with this role. And golly, what happens though when you have, and that's why I say you have these larger companies, these contractors, and then the individuals, when they don't want to learn, I guess they just don't get the certifications, then they're not employable anymore.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
that is happening.
but that's the way the system is set up, though. You either comply or you don't, and if you don't, go do something else.
Right. Look,
Man,
you don't have to do it here, but you can't be here if you're not going to do it.
that's right.
And that's it.
Yeah, God bless you. Whatever you do,
Hey,
it
good
better
luck.
not be hot or bite
Right.
you.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. I also, you said early on, safety is necessary, and you mean regulations and guidelines, but safety is necessary. I mean, you whatever it is you're doing, you better go about it safely, or one, you're not going to get the outcome, but you in your world, you're not going to be around, and
Right.
so your family is going to miss you. Everything slows down for everybody who loved you. I mean, it's really a big deal.
I take a kind of middle of the road approach. And this may not be the best approach. It's just what I found works. I firmly believe you can over safety something to death. It is possible to engineer out all risk. It is not wise.
Yeah.
There's going to come a point in time where, look, we do have to get things done. We do have to produce. And I think from a practical standpoint, that's always going to be much more likely to actually be implemented by the people who are doing the work than to over-engineer or, to be the safety police.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone likes a safety cop. And I try not to be that guy. There are times where, as you asked earlier, what do you do if someone's non-compliant, they're doing something that's safe? Look, you have to intervene. But we also have to take that with a grain of salt. Like, look, there is a right, safe way that this can be accomplished that is still productive, that is still profitable. If we go too far down the other end of the spectrum, we're just not going to get anything done. And the guys who are actually supposed to do it, they're not going to do it. If they don't like the rule, if they don't understand, if they don't agree with it, they can be, I don't know what the word is, but they can sandbag this thing until it's just not effective.
And then that upsets pretty much everything.
Everything.
And so
everything. And the clients will see it. Not my clients, but the operators will see it. The refiners will see it.
Yep.
Hey, your guy's out there on a roof, man, and yeah, he's tied off, but he's tied off with a 30-foot rope on a 15-foot roof. That is not going to do anything.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, we'll give them all 5-foot ropes. Well, yes, he can't reach the edge, but he can't do his job either.
Yeah, correct.
There's got to be some give and take here.
Look, that's a big light bulb for me, because not only in the work that you do, that's kind of in a lot of other industries, but the fact that you get that really, to me, says a lot about what you're doing with the companies you're doing with. Man, that is huge. So what's next for Scott Rainey and Quest?
I think there are a lot of challenges that the industry is going to face. A big one is the fact that we just don't have a whole lot of young guys coming into it.
Yeah.
Oil and gas has gotten a bad rap, not necessarily here in South Louisiana, but across the country. And I believe that's a mistake. Our lives don't exist as they exist without oil and gas. And whatever your stance is on climate change, the fact is we live in a world greased by oil and gas. And without it, we're just not going to have the lives that we have. And we don't have a large number of young people coming in to replace the aging workforce, which is a problem. What we're seeing is a lot more automation of tasks, to good and bad. To good in that we're automating tasks that were inherently dangerous. We're very dangerous. You're handling pipe, that's now being done mechanically. We're making up joints, that's being done mechanically. And that's great. But those guys who did those tasks now aren't doing them.
Yeah.
And they may have transitioned to something else, or they may have transitioned out. So I think that is definitely something that Quest has to look at. We've got to consider, how can we encourage young people to get into this? How can we make it easy for them to identify, hey, look, I'm interested in this field. What do I need to do to get started? Is providing them something that's kindergarten simple to understand, and say, all right, if you want to go do this task, here's where you need to start. Here's what this guy is going to ask for. I think we also have to, again, as an organization, consider, how do we leverage the technologies that are out there so that we can service more clients? And how do we provide them with tools that make their lives easier?
Yeah.
And it's even things as far as, from the communication standpoint. Okay, Aquinas is running these things. She's contacting this guy, and then she's got to contact this guy, and then this guy, and this guy. How do we take a step out? Where are those shortcuts? And I don't mean that in a bad way, but where are those shortcuts that we can take advantage of to service more clients?
Yeah, when you solve that, you got it figured out.
Well, I certainly hope so.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to Lead, Grow, Live. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We're going to put some of Scott's information in the show notes. So go in there and check out how you can get in touch with Scott Rainey at Quest Safety Solutions. So if you or somebody you know would be a great guest on our podcast, please reach out to me at jeff@companygrowthacademy.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. This is just your reminder that this is about leading your people, growing your company, and living your life.